I would have sugar cravings so bad. And again, no refined sugar, where I would grab, my wife would look at me like I was crazy. I would grab on the side of the counter and just grip it as hard as I could to fight through the sugar craving. That's how addicted to the sweet taste that I was. And, I would find like even 2 or 3 months in, water started tasting sweet to me and everything started changing. My taste buds were going crazy. My, energy levels were dropping here and there as I was transitioning. But, I tell everybody that is considering carnivore, and, all my clients know what I do. I tell them, it's going to be up until that 8-9 month mark where you're going to take, your body's going to take to just adapt and get adjusted to it. But it was rough for those first 8 to 9 months, I would say, and mostly just from getting rid of the sugar cravings.
Okay, good morning, folks. Okay, we've got a special guest today. Adam's here. It looks like your work, man, from what I can tell. Or is that a background screen?
It's a background screen, but yeah, I'm at work.
Got it. So you do you do CrossFit in Florida, I'm told, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've been in business going on 10 years now. So
nice,
quite a while.
Nice. Where is Venice at? I'm not familiar with where Venice is.
So my gym's actually in Northport, but it's close to Venice. I live in Venice, but it's over towards Sarasota. Are you familiar with Sarasota, Florida?
Yeah. I was not far from there. I was in Clearwater and around that area, so just a little bit north of you. Yeah, Sarasota's a really nice place. So the beaches, I think it was at Sand Key. I can't remember one of the keys. Yeah, Key. I think something.
Siesta Key.
Yeah, beautiful area. Well, awesome. Jealous. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's raining again today, so. Anyway, well, if you don't mind, can you just, Adam, if you give us a little background history on you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've owned my gym, CrossFit Northport, for about 9 years. I've been doing carnivore for about 3 years, and I've seen great results, but I've kind of had a wide variety of different lifestyles, if you will, over the years, being heavily into CrossFit. So I'm glad to be here and talk about kind of my journey and answer any kind of questions that I can for your viewers.
Yeah, nice. Because I get a lot of questions about that. I'm older, but I'm still an athlete. I still compete. I'm still going pretty hard. Even in my mid 50s, and CrossFit has got a special type of breed of person that does that, and the workouts are particularly challenging, particularly at the competitive levels where you're training 2, 3, 4 workouts a day in some cases. So it's nutrition plays a huge role in that. What got you into CrossFit in the first place?
So actually, when I found CrossFit, I was doing mixed martial arts. I was doing Muay Thai and Kempo. And when I was looking for a new gym, when I moved down to Florida from Pennsylvania, I found a CrossFit gym that was attached to one. I went into CrossFit thinking that I would be able to destroy it. It would be no problem. And I'm not even joking when I tell you there was some older ladies that were basically cheering me on after my first workout where I was dying. And from that point on, I was hooked and realized I didn't really know what fitness was.
Yeah, it's definitely a different, it's like anything if you don't do it. Like the first time, I'm just doing the opposite. I'm just going into martial arts right now, jiu-jitsu, and it's just a different, it's just a different skill set, and it's a different set of physical demands. And, I really, I know CrossFit, a lot of people sort of have their problems with it, but I think it's great personally. I mean, my workout has always mimicked a lot of what you do. I'm 6'5", so I'm not the ideal candidate to do some of those exercises as far as competitively. But I mean, the overall thought of just condition, what should you work on? Well, the answer is all of it, kind of. I think that's always a good, strength, speed, size, hypertrophy, conditioning. All those things are great. So, so you went ahead and got your level 1 and then level 2 certificate as far as coaching is concerned.
Yeah, I have a level 2. I have a USAW. I'm a USAW performance coach as well. I'm working on a level 3 right now. In all honesty, a lot of the certifications from a local level don't mean much to individuals. And as much as I love CrossFit and I'm a big believer in CrossFit, that education is, not something necessarily that's going to help to an extent. Biomechanics and things like that are not really dove into too much with that. It's just kind of like a basic starter course. And you really have to research and study on your own a lot.
Well, I think when you get into some of the higher certifications, then you get more and more specialized in who you're going to be serving. The average person trying to get in shape doesn't need a level 3 weightlifting coach, right? I mean, it's just right. I mean, I trained under a guy who was a pretty high level weightlifting coach for a while, and it was very fun. But again, I'm not really built to be a weightlifter. as far as, snatches and clean. I literally snatching the bar, my arms were maxed out, and it was still wasn't long enough, because I've got such long arms and, one of those things. How do you, so you did carnivore you've been doing a carnivore-ish diet for 3 years. How do you do it? I mean, how do you make that work? I mean, are you still training at a high level? Are you still doing the intense workouts all the time?
That's a great question. So actually, I just got pulled out of retirement. So I did retire from competitive stuff. I'm 34, and I competed all through my early 20s, and basically I got pulled back in. So I was curious to see how it would be now that I've been doing carnivore for 3 years and increasing my volume to basically 2 a day type mentality. How is it going to affect me? And in all honesty, it hasn't affected me at all. And I'm actually blowing a lot of people out of the water when it comes to those that are focused on carb driven based fuels. So it's been really cool to see. I was nervous at first, but yeah, I've been competitively training again for about 6 months, roughly.
Yeah, I think one of the key differentiators here is the fact that you've been adapted to it for so long, and I've seen that with me, and I've seen with some other very high level athletes. We just had a guy that just made a U.S. U.S. wrestling team. He's on the international squad. He's been carnivore for 6 months, and he says, "Man, my recovery's awesome. I feel great. I don't get sore as much." So it's doable, and I know a lot of professional mixed martial artists that do this in various sports, rugby, professional football. But I think it's you're going to spend 6 months maybe adapting to it from an athletic standpoint. Most people aren't willing to do that. They go for a month and they see their performance drop 10%. They're like, whoa, this isn't right. So I'm glad you were able to, kind of go after being fully adapted, because you do get very effective at, producing the fuel you need. You get very effective gluconeogenesis. Your body does what you need it to do over given enough time. What does a diet look like for you? How much are you eating? How frequently? What kind of stuff?
So, like I said, I do stick to carnivore 100%, but mine's a little bit more focused. I do a macro-based focus where I'm actually weighing and calculating, because I believe our bodies are machines, and too much of fuel, regardless of what it is going to be not good. It's going to promote fat gain, right?
Right.
So I would say on average, probably about 5 to 6 pounds of beef a day. I'm eating ribeye. I'm eating any kind of steak you can think of. Really, meat in general is all I go for. I don't do any of I know you can do a little bit of dirty carnivore and sneak in some hard cheeses. I try to avoid all of that. And in terms of seasoning, it's just the sea salt aspect. But yeah, lots of meat. I'm probably on my training days, I'm about 3,300 calories. And then on my non-training days, I'm in a little bit of a deficit, just because I don't need that extra fuel when I'm not training. So, I'm trying to avoid fat gain.
So because you said 5 to 6 pounds of steak a day, and then is it relatively lean then? Because the 300 calories is going to be, I don't know what's the macro percentage if you're weighing, do you know what that is?
Yeah. So it's roughly about 60-40 kind of split. And it all depends on the day really, and what kind of meats I'm mixing in there. I could go with a leaner based meat like a chicken or eggs, or if I'm like struggling, and if I can feel my body needs fat, because I'm pretty good at being aware of how my body is, then I might change the macros on that day and up the fat and eat a ribeye or something like that. But I can tell you 32 ounces of ribeye, when I weigh it out, it ends up being about 1,600 calories, right around there.
Okay. So after cooking, you cook all that stuff down?
Yeah, I do. That's a good question. I do cooked weight, not pre-cooked weight.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, that makes a pretty big difference in that. And then, so as far as, needing more fat, is that just performance dips? And, like is your training cycle such that you kind of, you ramp up and down, you have little macro and mesocycles type stuff where higher demands at certain times of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually are in a deload week this week. And typically what I would recommend is kind of, increasing fat when we're in that higher level training, just, for the energy. And then as we start to go into a deload week, maybe up the protein a little bit, or have it a little bit more in balance. But, we only take a week of recovery. So during that week of recovery, we still want to get the nutrients in. You're still going through cellular repair. So it's important that we still get the adequate nutrients from a performance perspective in recovery.
How do you manage your hydration? Are you supplementing electrolytes and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I use a product called Keto Chow. So it's got potassium, magnesium, it's got the salt water in it. And that's usually what I put in every drink. I train in a hot environment and I work out and I'm standing in a gym, with no AC all day long. So hydration is key. I can't stress that enough. I tell my clients that as well. It's so important in this Florida sun and heat to always stay hydrated.
Yeah,
Have that good
absolutely.
balance.
Yeah, there's a lot of humidity down there, particularly in the summertime. I'm going to be back there, I think, in November, but it's a lot nicer than for sure. So as far as 2-day workouts, how do you manage your meals around? Are you eating between workouts then?
So I did intermittent fasting for many years. So I honestly like to train on an empty stomach. And then pretty much I'm a big meal kind of guy. I like to just put down a ton of calories, only twice a day. So I don't believe in like more frequent meals. I think your body will truly adapt to, having big meals, and then kind of just supplementing towards the end of the day. But I don't spread it out. I like 2 big meals personally, and I like to train on an empty stomach in a fasted state.
Yeah, I mean, we when you eat a bit, when you're pounding down 2 pounds of steak, what's your morning? Is it like an early morning workout and then an afternoon workout, or what's your split look like?
Yeah, typically I work out around 7 a.m. And then I'm usually going for about an hour, hour and a half. And then I don't really pick it back up till around 3 p.m. is when I get back into it.
So your meals are when then relative to that?
Yeah, so my meals will be, I wait till around noon, 12:30 noon to eat. And then I actually eat probably around 8:30, 9 o'clock when I get home from work. I'm not a big believer in, set time windows, or if you eat after 8, you're going to, put on weight. I think it's a big misconception.
Yeah, I mean, it's calories, that's ultimately what's going to drive it. For my personal thing is I just sleep better. Have you noticed, like you said, you came out of retirement, how are you doing now compared to some of your objective goals, say?
Okay, yeah. So obviously with that age difference in my mid 20s, I felt much, much better. I've always had clean nutrition since I was probably about 18. I started with paleo, that's big in the CrossFit world is paleo. Then I transitioned from paleo and I switched into more of a keto based approach. And that's when, after that, for a few years, that's when I decided to go carnivore. But, with the age and with the volume, I think it's normal for all of us, regardless of how we eat, if we come from a cleaner background, to kind of feel that age, as it progresses in terms of recovery and in terms of strength increase. It's just, as this testosterone levels drop, kind of, the weight and the performance kind of goes along with it.
Yeah. Have you, do you feel like you do some things better now in your 30s? You've seen improvements in?
I would say I'm more aware. I focus on recovery a lot more. I'm more aware of how my body works in terms of, if we're still talking performance, you were breaking up there a little bit, so I apologize. But I'm more aware of where to push my body, where to back off, listening to my body on how to recover. Carnivore has really allowed me to not feel anything in my joints. And that's the one thing that I felt, regardless of the way that I was eating, was joint discomfort. Even with proper biomechanics and movement patterns, I was still having joint discomfort. And that all stopped as soon as I really shifted into carnivore full force.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people notice, that their joint, just inflammation and pain seems to improve significantly. Now that you said you're later on, you're in your 30s as opposed to your 20s for recovery and performance. About is, outside of diet, as you've gotten older, what other sort of recovery tools or performance tools are you using other than the training, obviously?
Yeah. So in my opinion, the biggest thing we can do at any age, and I always tell my clients, there's never a rest day from stretching, mobilization, working that soft tissue, that fascia release. It's very, very important. So I'm a big believer in yoga. I'm a big believer in just active stretching and working on static holds. Because range of motion is not only important on, in a gym environment but also from a day-to-day environment as well, and to reduce some of that chronic pain that we might have from just being fixed in positions for so long.
I know CrossFit has gone through some different evolutions over the years, and recently, I know the trend, I really haven't paid attention to the new leadership in CrossFit. What's been the focus?
So I think overall, and I'm sorry, I'm only getting like part of your questions from the way that it's breaking up. But in terms of leadership structure and leadership change, which is what I think you were talking about, I wouldn't say the overall perspective and scope and focus of CrossFit has changed. Just more so, they're trying to revamp the image with some of the negative things that may have been said from the previous founder. But the dynamics and the function of CrossFit still are the same. I would say, though, that they are focusing on better training in their certifications than they did before, stricter standards, which is important because, with CrossFit, with any sport, with any profession, there's good and there's bad. And that's what I always try to tell people. You need to find that good CrossFit gym, that good doctor that, meets your standards. And so typical exercises in CrossFit are going to be a functional fitness, right? So any kind of movement that you would do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's picking something up off the floor, or bringing something from your waist up to your shoulders or from your shoulders up to overhead, those are the kind of things that we focus on. We do a lot of that through different weightlifting exercises. And what good CrossFit gyms will do, and again, not all of them are good, which is what I was saying just a little bit ago. What good CrossFit gyms will do is teach you biomechanics. So these movements that we're teaching you we're breaking them down step by step by step. So you know how to actually utilize your body and get into proper positions to avoid chronic pain. That's pretty much what we do. Now, there are names associated with those movements, but I'm not going to throw out those names. But it's pretty much doing functional movements, because that's what's important, is the functional aspect of fitness, something that you can go and do outside of the gym and just make you better at life. That's the beauty of what CrossFit is. All right, Phil, I see you said adding in fat. What are the signals for this? So oftentimes I just listen to my body. If I'm getting really hungry, if I feel severe fatigue coming on, that's when I'll kind of up my protein to fat content. And it's going to be different for every individual. You really have to get in tune with your body. And what I believe is that does take some time to figure out and recognize the signals that your body is giving you. So Gina, I see you said the issues I'm having with CrossFit style workouts isn't actually related to my carnivore diet. Then I guess I would have to ask, what kind of issues are you having when it comes to CrossFit? You use Keto Chow daily. Are you taking the electrolyte supplement, or are you taking the actual shake itself? The shake. Okay, so I don't personally believe in the shakes, and I'm sure Dr. Baker would agree with this, that whole nutrition, full food nutrition is superior to any kind of supplement out there. Now, when it comes to the electrolytes themselves, I often find, it's important that we use those to kind of help restore our mineral levels and electrolyte balance. But in terms of the shakes as a meal replacement, I don't recommend that to my clients, and I wouldn't do it myself. Whole food is always best, in my opinion. Keto Chow offers like a meal replacement supplement. The one that I was referring to was the electrolyte supplement itself, not the meal replacement. And I was telling them that I believe, and I'm sure, Doctor, you believe as well, that whole food is always superior to any kind of processed shake, if you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're always going to get a higher complement of nutrients in there. I mean, I can see where a lot of people ask me about protein powder, and I say, look, it's a good source of protein, but I mean, food is much more than just protein. We know, for instance, when it comes to animal source food, cholesterol is anabolic. I mean, we know that it has an impact on sex hormones, testosterone in particular, if you're concerned with putting on size and strength. And then, just cholesterol in general tends to be anabolic for other reasons outside of just hormone support. So it's important to do that. So now that you're 3 years doing this, what got you doing a carnivore diet anyway? I mean, it's kind of odd. I mean, it sounds like you were already in shape. You weren't like suffering. Unless, I don't know, maybe I'm hearing something wrong. You weren't suffering from diseases or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I was suffering from nothing. And in fact, a client of mine who's actually a general practitioner, he's a physician, internal medicine doc, and he actually told me about it. I had never heard of carnivore, and he's like, I'm thinking about doing this. And so he was coming to me for advice. And I don't like to give advice to clients unless I personally try something first, right? It's a disservice to clients. It's important to be able to relate to the client and what they're going through when you're doing something or recommending it. So I told him, I was like, look, let me look into it. And so I looked into it, and he's a physician, so he's not a dumb guy. And he actually read your book. He followed all your research, and he's the one who told me about it. And I was like, look, if you're going to try this, I'll do it along with you, because I'm interested in what might happen. So, he kind of did it for a little while, and then most people kind of bounced back and forth, and, he's no longer doing it, but he's the one who told me about it. So that was interesting to see.
Yeah. So you just said, I'll just do it for an experiment, huh? And then, how did you decide I'm going to keep doing this for 3 years though?
Yeah, so I have a long history of blood work. I'm lucky enough to have parents that are physicians that are against all of this, by the way. But they're always there to run panels anytime I want to run panels. And when I first started doing paleo, they didn't think it was going to be the best way, yada yada. So I've been building blood work over the last, I would say, 12 years, just to show from going to that paleo state to then a keto state and then going to the carnivore state. But the reason I stuck with carnivore, and let me tell you, the first 8 months were absolute torture. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But the longer I started to stick with it, I could feel that the achiness went away. My energy levels, I would say, based off of my schedule, which my sleep schedule is not great due to my career, but they significantly improved. And I would say now that I'm in my competitive training, I can see that my recovery is happening a little bit easier than it was before. So once I started seeing the results, I decided to stick with it. And now, there's no turning back. I don't have any desire to go back at all.
Yeah, that's, like I said, kudos for you for sticking with it because a lot of people, particularly, in the athletic field, they're going to be like, hey, they wouldn't put up with 8 months of, and what was a problem for 8 months? What you kind of said was a disaster for 8 months. What was going on that would made it so problematic for you?
So I would like to say that, it was complete detox, but I really had a fairly clean, besides some plants, very clean diet. But what I did do a lot of, and I find with my clients, a lot of people that are doing keto kind of tend to focus on is for that sweet fix. That's where I'd be going to keto based products. So like Rebel ice cream, again, I'm macro driven. So I used to save my little bit of carbs that I had just to eat a whole pint of the Rebel ice cream. It's good in fat. It's good. There's the carbs there. And it was just kind of giving me that like sugar fix. And I'd find myself really just going towards these keto based products just to get that little bit of an endorphin rush. So once I decided to cut all of that out, that's when the real detox started to hit. And even though I haven't had refined sugars in the last probably 12 years, even the receptors in the brain activating from those sweet products was enough for me to go through some withdrawal. I would say for the first 8 months, I would have sugar cravings so bad. And again, no refined sugar, where I would my wife would look at me like I was crazy. I would grab on the side of the counter and just grip it as hard as I could to fight through the sugar craving. That's how addicted to the sweet taste that I was. And I would find like even 2 or 3 months in, water started tasting sweet to me and everything started changing. My taste buds were going crazy. My, energy levels were dropping here and there as I was transitioning. But, I tell everybody that is considering carnivore, and, all my clients know what I do. I tell them, it's going to be up until that 8-9 month mark where you're going to take, your body's going to take to just adapt and get adjusted to it. But it was rough for those first 8 to 9 months, I would say, and mostly just from getting rid of the sugar cravings.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people struggle with that, and some people struggle with it a long time into it. When you said you have clients that you work with and you suggest that, are you having some people take you up on that?
So although, I'm 100% a big fan of carnivore, I think a lot of people that are transitioning from the standard American diet and the addictions they have, I think it's a very hard starting point for people. And for some people, I think it's setting them up for failure. I do believe it's the best, but you're basically going from eating standard American diet to cold turkey. And we're all human beings. I've worked with hundreds of clients over the last 9 years, and I see all of them kind of go through the vicious cycle. So yes, some people have taken me up on it, and then they only last like a month or sometimes even a week. Sometimes they can't get through the withdrawal symptoms. So yeah, I've had clients take me up on it, but they're not sticking with it as much as myself. My wife tells me that she's never seen anybody like with willpower like me. And I do believe that, with any type of nutrition, you have to have the willpower, the desire, and almost hit rock bottom to really get to that next point where it's like you say, enough is enough. I need to do something different. This isn't working.
What drove you to try to compete again? I mean, that's, it seems like a lot of people are like, I'm done. What's getting you back out there and want to compete again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I basically told my one client who I used to compete with for years that, I was done. She kept trying to get me to do another competition. And I said, I'd only do it if another individual that we used to compete with would do it as well. And, I was thinking he was going to say no, but unfortunately he said yes. And we ended up just getting right back into it. And honestly, I'm so glad that I started. It's kind of like, with nutrition. Once you fight through the suck for a little bit, you're super happy with the results. You're feeling great. It's like a whole new world again.
Yeah. And so do you have an actual competition in mind that you're going to go do at some point?
I do. There's a big competition in Tampa that we're doing mid-August. So I'm looking forward to that. And, my team's hoping that I don't stop after this, but hopefully I don't.
Is it unknown what you're doing, or do they have the events listed for you in this particular one?
So CrossFit's all about the unexpected. So we won't find out about those workouts probably till a week or two beforehand.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty, I don't know if sometimes I know some of the ones they post, well, I guess like the open and stuff like that. So
Right.
where do you find that are you noticing like you're better at certain aspects of CrossFit than others? I mean, everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. Where do you find your strengths and weaknesses are?
I would say my biggest weakness is going to be more of gymnastics-based movements. I'm an Olympic weightlifter. My background's in Olympic weightlifting. So the high skilled kind of movements are like my bread and butter, like a snatch or a clean and jerk. That's where I'm strong at. And I would say some more gymnastic-based movements are where I need to improve. But that's what makes CrossFit fun and unique. You're constantly facing challenges, and that's what makes it so addicting. It's because you continually prove to yourself that you're capable of doing so much more than you even realized.
Do you still play with the martial arts stuff at all? Or is that something you don't mess with anymore?
No, I don't. No real reason behind that. I just kind of got addicted to CrossFit and made it my life.
Yeah, gotcha. And then, as far as, because I'm obviously a huge proponent of just health in general, and most people know me for nutrition, but I'm very much a proponent of exercise. I think that's a huge part of the equation. Do you have a lot of clients that you're just helping with health in general?
Absolutely. In fact, our gym, a majority of the clients walking in this door have never worked out a day in their life. So, they're literally coming off of the couch, as we call it, and jumping right into fitness. And, I have often people ask me, oh, don't I need to get in shape before I do CrossFit? Absolutely not. There's no waiting to start. It's like nutrition, right? There's no, it's not like, let me just dive into it slowly. You just have to commit and make that first step. And regardless of experience, you're going to see results.
Yeah. And how is, as far as what kind of sort of people are you seeing, transitions you're able to affect with, people coming from poor condition to very good?
Yeah, right. So it all depends, again, on how committed an individual is. We've had some very big success stories with some severely obese individuals that have stuck with it. They stick to the training. And then they focus on the nutrition. And what I tell every person walking into the door, CrossFit is not going to fix your problems. Yeah, you're going to move around. You're going to restore your range of motion. You're going to improve your cardiac output. You might not get as winded, but ultimately without focusing on nutrition, and I call it the 80-20 rule, if you don't focus on that nutrition part, it's basically going to hold you back. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're putting garbage into your system, your results are going to be kind of crappy as well.
What is, from a frequency standpoint, what is the amount sessions per week that the average person needs to do to sort of fix themselves, health wise, you think?
Yeah, I think we could all debate on that topic, anybody in the fitness world. But as a starting point for somebody from what we call couch to CrossFit, I would recommend maybe 3 days a week where they're exercising. Let's just use Monday, Wednesday, Friday as an example. And then on all of the opposite days, they can work on stretching, active recovery, like taking bike rides, walking. I mean, we should always continue to move. We should never just be fixed in a certain position, regardless of if it's our off day from the gym, right? We should always be doing something. But I would say at a minimum, 3 days a week is what we would recommend somebody new to fitness doing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of avoiding sedentary behavior as much as possible. I'm standing right now. I do all my sort of as much as possible. I do most of my work standing when possible, and I walk when I can, and that type of stuff. As far as what about protein? You said, I know you were talking about your macronutrients being, and I think you said 60% protein, 40% fat, and then sometimes you up that a little bit. What do you feel that the average person, comes into the gym should be targeting for protein?
So I kind of reference, so we use an in-body device with all of our clients. I don't know how familiar you are with in-body scans, but it really gives us a breakdown of their skeletal muscle mass, their body fat mass percentages. And what I like to use as a reference point when I'm working with those individuals is one, their lean body mass, and two, their basal metabolic rate. So what I typically say is I want them to strive for about a gram gram of protein per pound based off of that lean body mass. And it's not like back in the day where we didn't have these tools to really get a specific number on lean body mass. Now we actually have the technology to do that. And what I find with my clients is just having them reach those protein goals. They're building muscle really without even working out because they're so malnourished. It's a lot of things that you talk about. I see it every single day, just upping that protein more in line with their lean body mass.
Do you see, again, we see a lot of sort of push everybody onto a plant-based diet or significantly shift away from eating meat. Are you seeing a lot of vegetarians, vegans come into the CrossFit facility, and how are they doing compared to the rest of the population?
I'm so glad you brought that up because obviously vegans and I don't get along. I respect them for, their own thing, but I do have a few clients that are vegan based. And like I said, we do in-body scans with everybody that comes in our gym as a baseline. And I had two individuals that I'm thinking of specifically that have been vegan for the last 2 years. He has a heart condition. His cardiologist told him, hey, you need to get away from red meats. You need to stick to just fruits and veggies. And that's all they've done, right? And what I find with most vegans, and I've worked with quite a few over the years, is that they're often supplementing with man-made supplements. They're looking for anything to kind of try to meet their calorie needs, although none of them do. And what I find with most vegans when it comes to putting them in our in-body device is they're skinny fat. So they have the high, amount of body fat, low amount of muscle mass. And I never see any changes. They all plateau. They all struggle to build actual muscle mass itself. And then their body fat kind of just hovers around the same thing. For a female that I've worked with one of the gentlemen that I've worked with, he can't put on any muscle at all. So although he is seeing some strength increases in terms of the weights, it's very minimal. The last 2 years, we do annual scans as well with our clients on the in-body device. And we've seen zero changes for either of them in terms of gain in skeletal muscle mass. And the body fat mass has pretty much hovered and stayed around the same. So no progress there at all. And with every vegan that I have met, they all have to do additional supplementation just to kind of get those nutrients in that they need. I've seen a lot of anemia with vegans. I've seen a majority of them struggle to get their daily nutrients in, their requirements to continue with fitness and see gains. It's almost impossible eating plants unless you're eating something that's man-made to do that.
Yeah, I remember like late Charles Pollock once said he just won't work with them. He just said it's a waste of time because they're not going to make the progress that they want to see, despite the sort of the propaganda, the game changers and all that stuff. And when you go to the real world, you see that these people really, really struggle. Have you been able to convert any of them to sort of adding more animal protein or any animal protein to the diet?
Yeah, so I've converted one client where she stopped being a vegan altogether. And that's when we started seeing that skeletal muscle mass increase. Her body fat mass started to drop. Her heart rate. So we have a My Zone in our gym where it's displaying heart rates on the screen. For her, and in terms of the training aspect, you could see her heart rate, her active heart rate starting to lower from getting those nutrients in. And overall, like her mood stabilized, hormonally, she stabilized. She was able to get off of some antidepressants as well. So it was really cool to see that transition, and she'll never go back to plants again. And then a lot of vegans that I work with, I find that they really need to crash and hit rock bottom before they decide to make any changes, because I don't know if they're brainwashed or what. I'm not too sure what's going on, but they believe in it so much that they really have to hit rock bottom in order to switch.
Yeah, I see that over and all. They just kind of get ethically sort of bought into the ideology, and it kind of, it's kind of tough to change. I see it literally every day. I do consultations with people nutritionally, and I literally don't go a week without seeing a couple ex-vegans that talk about how their health significantly took a nosedive with that.
Right.
As far as your own particular training and frequency, so twice a day, is it I mean, are you doing, I guess you've got some sort of system. Is it strength in the afternoon and technique in the morning, or how do you break that up?
Yeah, so typically I start off the day with two metcons, with metabolic conditioning, or what in CrossFit's known as WODs. So I'm hitting the conditioning early on, and then I do my recovery. I'll have my meal. My job allows me to get a little luxury and sneak in a nap in between. So I'm grateful for that. And then I kind of jump into my strength session afterwards. Now a lot of people do the opposite. They hit the strength prior to doing the metabolic conditioning, but I would rather train in that fatigue state, because from a competitive level, you're not going to have the opportunity to be fully rested and recover going into heavy lift. Your body has to be under stress in order to do that. And in my opinion, you're a much better athlete in that scenario when you train, where and lift when you're fatigued. That output's a little bit better in a competitive sense.
Yeah, one of the criticisms early on with CrossFit is that, didn't like the fact that you're doing highly skillful movement. Let's say like snatches for multiple repetitions in a fatigue state, and a slight error could be catastrophic. How do you work around that, or has the programming changed a little bit, or what's the story with that?
I love that question, because yeah, CrossFit got a bad name early on, and it's still getting a bad name because the requirements to getting into CrossFit are so minimal. You could literally take a 2-day weekend class and open up a CrossFit affiliate. And that's the problem. So like I was saying earlier, and I think we got cut off when we were answering this question, there's good CrossFit gyms, there's bad CrossFit gyms, there's good doctors, there's bad doctors. So, you want to go to a facility that understands biomechanics, that pushes technique, not loading up an empty barbell and as heavy as you can and doing a movement, right? So we push technique. That's the first thing. And in the background, I don't know if you can see it, it's really hard to see, but we have on the wall, it says form is everything, right? That's what we believe in. So you must master a PVC pipe or an empty barbell before we allow you to start adding on weight. And if that movement is altered by the weight, then it's too heavy for you. And I think, a lot of gyms, especially early on, hopefully it's getting better now, kind of got sucked into that CrossFit Games mentality. Like, oh, we just want to go heavier and heavier and heavier, and we don't care about movement. And that's really what leads to the injuries. So, every CrossFit gym is different. At our gym, we have a fundamentals program. So we don't just throw you into a CrossFit class. I think that's the worst thing you can do to a client. And that's a way to not retain a client and get them injured and give yourself a bad name. But we have what's called our fundamentals program, where you're working in 5 sessions privately, one-on-one with a coach, where we're really breaking down biomechanics. And it's all movements you're doing on an everyday basis. We're just teaching you step by step by step on how to utilize your joints and not abuse the joints. And then we just assign a name to the movement. So I was talking earlier, like a deadlift, you're picking something up off the floor, bringing it to your waist. How many times a day do we do that? Hundreds of times. How many times do we sit down? Right? Most people don't even understand what a hip hinge is. So if you don't know how to hinge at the hips properly, you're utilizing the knee joints, and then we have that chronic knee pain. So yeah, to shorten the answer, pretty much finding the right gym is the key.
Yeah, I guess, the problem is, how do you know? Because most people
Right.
just go to the local facility because it's convenient. It's like, I'm not going to drive 2 hours to go to a gym that might be better. And so you have to kind of weed through some of that stuff. As far as, is CrossFit still growing as far as you know? I mean, are they still opening more facilities, more boxes? Is that sort of on a growth pattern still?
Yeah, CrossFit's definitely still growing. I think it's at a slower growth pattern than it was, back in 2005 to 2012. That's where, or maybe 15, that's where it was really at its biggest growth pattern. It's definitely slowing down. I think anybody who would decide to open up a fitness facility in this economy is asking to fail. And even in terms of a CrossFit gym, if I were to decide to open one right now, I would never do it, because you have to go up against people like me. And I've had the ability over the last 9 years to really build a high-end brand, where somebody coming in out of, the 9 to 5 lifestyle might not have the income to do that. And going into a poor economy, no bank is going to approve a loan for a gym right now. It's just it's expendable income that not a lot of people have right now.
I mean, obviously you got the different, pull up, stations behind you, and they've got the concept 2 rowers and the or the air assault bikes and all. I mean,
Right.
is any new things, and like new movements or new things happening in the last few years in CrossFit?
So I think that's a great question. And the way I would want to reference this is, There's nothing wrong with basics. Just like when it comes to eating carnivore, that's a very basic kind of thing to do, right? We're just eating meats, we're eating them the way they're found. CrossFit, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. CrossFit is just doing functional movements. So I don't, I'm sure you guys have seen the big tire flips and things like that. I don't believe in that. I believe in just utilizing jump ropes, utilizing our bodies, barbells, dumbbells, slam balls, kettlebells, medicine balls, all of those type of things. That's all we really need. Yeah, we have Concept 2 bikes and we have the rowers, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's just getting up and moving and doing things that are functional, because CrossFit is just made to make us better at everyday life. Yeah, some people make it a sport, but that's not what CrossFit was started for. CrossFit was started to just make everyday life easy. So you don't have a hard time getting up off the floor, or you don't have a hard time tying your shoes. Like, that's why CrossFit was created.
Yeah. And it's helped, I don't know, gosh, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, probably more than that, with those things. And then because all we typically see are the competition stuff. That's what most people are exposed to. If you're not actually at a particular gym, like where I do my jujitsu, there's a CrossFit facility downstairs and we do jujitsu upstairs, and I always, walk through there and kind of see some of the stuff, and tempted to do some of that. I like I said, I know I could do well in the rowing and some deadlifting and some of the things I could be very competitive at, but some of the other things I'm like, that's going to take a long, long time, which, it's kind of tough to want to do that at some point. But
well, I'm sure you could definitely do it. You're probably missing range of motion. I can see your shoulders right now, so I'm sure you're tight in the thoracic spine. You're probably going into an externally rotated position is probably difficult with going overhead. But hey, just like working on your nutrition, working on flexibility and mobilization is a key component to overall health and fitness, right? Flexibility is a metric of health.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's one of many, and it's important to try to do as many of those as possible. So family, you said, I can't remember, you said wife, she said you're distant. Is she upped her meat intake since she started doing this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And she's like, well, what do you think about me jumping on the podcast with you? And I'm like, yeah, you're not a full carnivore. So she's definitely increased her meat intake. I would say she's more keto based. She's addicted to sugar, especially, when her period's coming around, that type of thing. That's what she wants to go through is for that chocolate. And I think, a lot of women want to go for that. So she's kind of struggling a little bit with transitioning away from the sugars and the sweets, but they are keto based. So they're monk fruit extract, even though I don't believe that's any better. For the most part, that's the only stuff that she intakes. But yeah, definitely a lot of meat. I mean, we eat ribeye every single day.
Does she do CrossFit as well?
She does. She's not competitive, but she's in here 5 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And she noted an improvement in her performance as well, since including more high quality nutrition in the diet.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, she's gone through 2 pregnancies with CrossFit. A lot of people think that you can't do that. You can. We've worked with probably 30 individuals within the years that we've been open going through that. And I really wish that she would have been carnivore through that pregnancy into CrossFit and performing. I think it would be an interesting study, and I wish we could do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few women that have done carnivore pregnancies and breastfeeding and have done just extremely well. And so I don't think there's any real reason not to want to do that. Obviously you consult with your obstetrician, the party line, but the reality is they tend to do very well.
Right.
Do you have any trouble in Florida I've been there. I don't think you will, but any trouble finding good quality meat or meat that you want down there in Florida?
Fortunately, not anymore. 12 years ago, when I was telling my parents more of the paleo approach, you couldn't find grass-fed meat at any store, no matter how hard you tried. What I think has been great just in my fitness career and watching consumers' demands change is that the supermarkets are finally waking up and providing those things. So I think it's great to see everything's, pretty readily available. It's just, making it work with your budget. And oftentimes I hear people say, oh, it's so expensive to eat that way. I'm like, is it really? I'm like, let's sit down. Let's talk about how often you're going out to restaurants. Let's talk about how many drinks you're having at the bar. And it's usually the same excuse that I hear people say when they say, oh, getting into CrossFit's expensive, right? You have to really look at the important things in your life priorities, and what truly matters in order to make it fit within your budget.
Yeah, and that's one thing, when you've got a little bit more invested in it, financially or whatever, it tends to keep you accountable, because you're like, oh, I'm paying, whatever X dollars a month. I better use this thing, and some people will do that. Are you finding, I mean, how many, and it seems like, the model for CrossFit wasn't like the Globo gym. It's just sign up a bajillion people and only 5% of the people actually use the gym with any regularity, where CrossFit is sort of lower user demand, but higher participation rate. Is that kind of what you guys have, membership wise?
I would say at our gym specifically, yes. At our gym, we are the most expensive in the area, and we will always stay the most expensive. And the reason is because we want to allow smaller classes, because it gives the consumer a better product at the end. We don't compete on price, we compete on quality. And that's what we tell everybody. So when you come into our gym, you're going to have constant attention. It's not like we're going to just give you a warm up and a workout and you're just going to go and do your thing. You constantly have the coach with you. We review and break down every movement, and then you're getting that feedback all the time. So we don't use price as a model point at all. In fact, our barrier to entry is much higher, because just to go through those fundamental sessions that we discussed, that's $375 to do those sessions. So it's a fairly big barrier to entry, where we have other gyms that will, and this is, you mentioned, how do you know what CrossFit gym's good or not? And the piece of advice that I can give is that if you go into a CrossFit gym and they allow you to just jump right into a class, that is a red flag right there. You need to ask yourself, how are they going to allow me to just jump into a class with all of these advanced movements when I may have never done any of those in my life? That's a red flag. But like I was saying, we use the price model as our point, to where it's more expensive, but you get more of the attention and quality there with it.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, I've gone through this over the years. I was a pretty decent, power lift, at least deadlifting. I was, 350 kilos at one point. And I mean, I'm 6'5". I've got long femurs. I've got, these different things. And people are telling you, well, this is a perfect squat technique and you have to do it this way. And you're like, well, that maybe works well if you're 5'8", but how do you, I mean, do you have different modeling for different sort of body types?
I think that's a great question. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Kelly Starrett. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
So I'm a big, exactly. I'm a big fan of his. I followed him when he was producing free content on YouTube. I believe that biomechanics, there's really only one way to do it correctly. And that's up for interpretation. So with CrossFit, remember, if it's not a competitive point, our goal is longevity and to avoid chronic pain. So we want to perform these movements where we're not going to have knee pain, or we're not going to have lower back pain. So we assess each individual and adapt to them, right? So I'm a big believer when it comes to the squat technique, and I'm sure you've seen the guy on Instagram or on social media that's big on knees super far over the toes. I 100% disagree with that. I think you're asking for a knee replacement. I think you're going to blow out that patellar tendon. So I'm a big fan of squatting with shins almost as vertical as possible. Slightly forward is acceptable, but no more than that. And, oftentimes people are like, well, I can't get anywhere near as low if I do that. Most of the time, it's not because of your femur length. It's because of the lack of range of motion in your hip flexor or your quads. You're so matted down and tight. You haven't put in the work to restore your range of motion to be able to get into those proper positions. So, and that's kind of what we navigate with our clients. Okay, so you can't squat below parallel without your hips dropping underneath your spine, which is what we call a butt wink, right? So you're just overloading the lumbar region of your spine. So we prevent them from going so low. We say, hey, this is your perfect squat depth. And as soon as you start to, work on stretching and restore your range of motion, then we can try to get below that parallel point. So that's kind of what we focus on is every client as an individual case, if you will.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll tell you, we are running out of time here. I got to go do some consults in just a second. So Adam, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Remind people again, where I know you said you were in Venice, Florida. Social media, any for somebody who's interested in doing, hooking up with you guys or learning more, where do they go?
Yeah. So if you want to go to CrossFitNorthport.com, we're available to help anybody. We're fairly close to Venice, Sarasota area. That's the best place to reach out. We're on CrossFit Northport on Instagram and on Twitter as well. So just reach out to us and we'll get back to you.
Well, Adam, thanks. And thanks for bearing with us through the technical issues. I'm not sure what's going on. I'll have to figure that out. Appreciate it. And maybe next time I'm in Florida, I'll run by and stop in for a workout or something.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Baker. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.